Three digits. You've never chosen them. You've probably never even seen how they're calculated. But that number decides where you live, what you drive, and sometimes whether you get the job. We call it a credit score, and it feels like a permanent, natural fact about you. But that number is younger than your parents. For almost all of human history, there was no score. So how did anyone decide whether to trust a stranger with money? By the end of this video, you'll see that your credit score isn't new at all. It's the oldest thing in the world, human memory, turned into math. And you'll see what we lost when we made that trade. Start with the word itself. Credit comes from the Latin credere, which doesn't mean money at all. It means to believe, to trust. When someone gives you credit, the word is literally saying, I believe you. For most of history, that belief had to live somewhere you could hold. And in medieval England, it lived in a stick. Here's how it worked. You owe me 10 pounds. So we take a wooden stick and we carve notches into it. A set width for pounds, a thinner cut for shillings, a tiny nick for a penny. Then we split the stick down the middle, lengthwise. I keep the long half, you keep the short half. And here's the clever part. The grain of the wood is random. No two splits match. So the only stick in the entire world that fits my half is yours. Forgery is impossible. Trust made physical. England ran on these tally sticks for 700 years. The king's treasury tracked the entire national debt on notched wood. In fact, the half the creditor kept was called the stock, which is very likely why, to this day, we call people who own a piece of a company stockholders. And then, one day, all that wood took its revenge. By the 1830s, the tally sticks were obsolete. 6 centuries of old debt records piled in the cellars of Parliament. So in October 1834, workers decided to burn them, stuffing the old sticks into the furnaces under the House of Lords. The fire got out of control. The flues overheated. The paneling caught. And the greatest fire London had seen since 1666 burned the Palace of Westminster to the ground. The old way of recording debt didn't just fade away. It literally burned down Parliament. So, trust could be carved into wood, but a tally stick only proves what two people already agreed. It can't tell a stranger whether you're good for it. For that, you needed something richer. You needed a reputation, and someone to remember it. Walk into a general store in a small town 150 years ago. You need flour, nails, cloth, but it's a lean month, and you don't have cash. You don't need cash. You say the words everyone said. Put it on my book. The shopkeeper opens a ledger, finds your name, and writes down what you took. You'll settle up later, after the harvest, after payday, in crops or coins or a day's labor. No interest forms, no application, just a name in a book. That ledger was the credit score of its age, and the thing deciding your limit wasn't a number, it was you, your reputation. Did you pay last time? Does the shopkeeper know your family? Are you the kind of person who shows up? In a town of 500 people, everybody knew the answer. Your creditworthiness was simply what the community remembered about you. This is the exact same idea as the very first economies. An entire system running on a shared memory of who owed what to whom. Your good name wasn't a metaphor, it was a financial instrument. Ruin it, and no one in town would sell you a sack of flour on trust again. It was personal, it was flexible. A good year for your family might buy you leniency. And it had one fatal flaw. It only works when everyone knows everyone. So, in a village, your reputation was your credit. But then people started moving. Cities exploded. Merchants began selling to strangers 1,000 miles away, people whose names meant nothing to them. How do you trust someone you've never met, in a town you'll never visit? Somebody figured out how to bottle a reputation and mail it. The year is 1841. America has just been gutted by a financial panic, and merchants are terrified of shipping goods to distant buyers who might never pay. So a New York merchant named Louis Tappan builds something new. He calls it the Mercantile Agency. And the idea is simple and a little unsettling. He recruits a secret network of local correspondents all across the country, lawyers, postmasters, ordinary townsfolk, and their job is to report, in writing, on the character and wealth of the businessmen in their area. One of those early correspondents, by the way, was a young lawyer named Abraham Lincoln. For the first time, your reputation was being written down by people you didn't know, mailed to a city you'd never see, and filed in a ledger you'd never be allowed to read. Tappan's agency grew into the company we now know as Dun & Bradstreet. But here's the dark part. These reports weren't numbers. They were opinions, and they carried every prejudice of the people writing them. The surviving ledgers, now kept at Harvard, are full of it. Judgments on a man's drinking, his marriage, his habits. One report warned that prudence with all Jews should be used. Another dismissed a black-owned business with a slur. Your financial fate now rested on a stranger's gossip and their bigotry. And it got more invasive, not less. By the mid-20th century, a company called Retail Credit, which you know today as Equifax, held secret files on millions of people. And those files went everywhere. One privacy scholar described them as covering his marital troubles, jobs, school history, childhood, sex life, and political activities. Investigators wrote down your rumored sexuality, whether you drank, whether your house was clean, and you were not allowed to see any of it. So, reputation had been ripped out of the community and locked in a filing cabinet. Secret, subjective, and soaked in prejudice. It was a disaster waiting to happen. And the fix for all of it was to erase the human being entirely and replace them with a number. The backlash came in 1970. After years of horror stories, Congress passed the Fair Credit Reporting Act, the first law that let ordinary people finally see and challenge their own files. The secret cabinet was cracked open, but the deeper revolution had quietly started back in 1956 in a small office in California. An engineer named Bill Fair and a mathematician named Earl Isaac had a radical idea. What if you took the human judge out of the decision completely? What if a person's creditworthiness could be calculated the same way, from the same data, for everyone? Their company was Fair, Isaac and Company, FICO. And in 1989, the FICO score was unleashed on the world. A single number, between 300 and 850, meant to capture your entire financial trustworthiness. And think about what that number was actually for. It was designed to be fair. The shopkeeper could refuse you because he didn't like your face. The 1841 correspondent could sink you because of your religion. The algorithm, in theory, doesn't care who you are. It looks at the same behavior the same way for everyone. We built the score to burn out human prejudice, the same prejudice sitting in those Harvard ledgers. But look at what we traded. For 300,000 years, your creditworthiness was a story. A rich, forgiving, personal story your community told about you. A story that knew you'd had a hard year, that remembered you always paid in the end. Now it's 3 digits. It doesn't know you lost your job caring for a dying parent. It doesn't know you're honest. It knows your payment history and your credit utilization, and it renders its verdict in milliseconds. We made the system fairer, and we made it colder. We took the judgment away from the neighbor who might forgive you, and gave it to a machine that never will. So the next time you check your score, remember what it really is. It's not a modern invention. It's the oldest human instinct there is. The need to know, can I trust you? The same question asked around a fire, across a shop counter, in a notched piece of wood. We just handed the answer to a computer. Your ancestors were judged by people who knew their whole story. You're judged by a number that knows 3 months of it. We called that progress, and maybe it is. One last question before you go. A shopkeeper who's known you for years would trust you in a heartbeat. A machine only sees your data. So, would you rather be judged by a human or a machine? Be honest. Let me know in the comments below. And if you're wondering why your own brain seems determined to keep that number low, why saving money feels almost impossible, click to watch this video right here.